welcome. Happy to see everyone, although I can't see you, actually. We're thrilled. I'm Robin Bradford, and my partner John Strong and I, you probably know, have
Everybody.
organized a really amazing retreat in Scotland in October. And Christopher Lockhart, our amazing mentor, story editor from William Morris Endeavor, is here to talk about an elusive topic that we all need to know more about, which is how to write an amazing logline. And John, did you have a couple of things you wanted to say before we get started?
I just want to make sure everybody knows that we will be asking questions eventually. Robin and I are going to ask Chris some questions. Some of these might be a little general if you're more advanced, but we all want to make sure we have a firm foundation. All right, well, Chris, just to make sure, as I said, that we're all on the same page here, I realize there's probably a lot of people here from your wonderful website, The Inside Pitch. But for those that don't know, what is a log line, and is it much different from an elevator pitch?
Well, it's a little different than an elevator pitch, perhaps in the sense that a log line is really the quickest and shortest way to be able to communicate your movie. Communicate your movie in a sentence, in as few words as possible. That's a log line. There are certain criteria to putting a log line together, but ultimately its objective is to get the idea of your movie communicated to somebody. And log lines are used by everybody. So anybody that ever tells you that log lines aren't important, they know nothing about this business, because they're used every day, everywhere, by everybody. Anybody who collects a paycheck in this business knows that log lines are a sort of currency almost. It's the way that we tell people about screenplays. Nobody has time to listen to a 20-minute pitch. I'm walking past somebody in the hallway and they say, hey, I read an amazing script that would be great for Emma Stone. What's it about? We're like walking past each other. So, oh, well, it opens like that's not the time nor place, right? So it's the log line. You throw out the log line, somebody says, oh, that's interesting. I like that. I'd like to read it. Yeah, it doesn't really sound like it's my cup of tea, thanks. But you communicate what that screenplay is in a sentence. That's a log line. Now, of course, a lot of writers will say things like, oh, it's impossible for me to communicate my screenplay in one line. And maybe that's what you think because you don't have enough experience or understanding to be able to distill your screenplay to one sentence. But I've read over 60,000 screenplays and I've written log lines for a lot of them. And it is absolutely not impossible. Any screenplay can have a log line and should have a log line.
I think writers get confused sometimes because they get very invested in which they should in characters in a certain scene, and they don't know really how to distill it into the large picture. And
right.
Yeah, we have to pay attention as we're writing, but yeah.
Yeah, people, you really have to put like your editorial hat on when you're writing a log line. And there was a log line on the Inside Pitch the other day that somebody had shared, and the information that I needed was in there, but it was kind of buried under a lot of superfluous details. Superfluous for the log line. Log line is not the screenplay. So you have to be able to discern, okay, is this log line information or is this screenplay information? Because there's some information that you just don't need for the logline, that you can hold off and let the reader discover that information or those details in the screenplay. So, but that can be tough. And by the way, it can be tough for me too sometimes. So I will just write a logline, and it might be 3 sentences when I start, and it might have 100 words. And then I just, take out my machete and I just hack away at it and just keep hacking away. And, maybe it takes 10 or 15 minutes max, but then I'm done. And
Yeah.
I'll often rewrite members' log lines in the group. And that's actually easy because they've done most of the work already. And then I can determine, yeah, this piece of information just isn't necessary for the log line. And we can hold off on that. It's always easy to write a log line for somebody else's screenplay. It's
Right.
very, very difficult to write a log line for your own screenplay for reasons that Robin just said. We're too close to it. We think everything is brilliant, so it all has to be included. This retreat is called Ignite the Spark, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Ignite the Spark. And so that spark really does begin with the log line. You preface this, John, by saying how to write amazing log lines. And so the truth really comes down to this. How do you write an amazing log line? Well, you really have to have an amazing idea. And the truth is that most writers just don't have amazing ideas. They have good ideas. They have serviceable ideas. They have ideas that are more programmers, rather than anything truly unique. And so the log line probably won't be amazing. You want it to be effective. That might be a word that I would use rather than amazing, because there's not a whole lot of amazement in town. I read a lot of scripts. I read scripts at a very, very high level. So I'm not reading scripts that are sort of, with all due respect, let's say contest scripts. I'm reading scripts that maybe have spent years in development with development executives and producers with a lot of experience and feedback from directors and actors. So these scripts are very, very far along. And I would say that the majority of the scripts that I read are, at the very least, serviceable. But very few are brilliant.
Mhm.
And but even the serviceable ones can be movies. I mean, we all go to the movies. How often do we see brilliant movies? We
Right.
just might watch a movie and say, something, that was fun. That was a fun 90 minutes. I'll probably never watch it again. I'll probably forget all about it next week. But while I was in the middle of it, it was entertaining. And that's the way it is with a lot of screenplays too. It isn't all that different. Just remember, movies don't get made because screenplays are brilliant. Movies get made because somebody's got money, and it's enough to gather the right people to put a project together. Sure, some movies are made because screenplays are brilliant, but again, you all go to the movies. So, and I know a lot of people are always scratching their heads. How'd that movie get made? Why did that movie get made? And it isn't always about the script. Could just be that some movie star, Tom Cruise, likes a screenplay, and he could possibly get that movie made. But believe it or not, even A-listers have their dream projects that they've been trying to get made for 100 years. Denzel has a movie on his slate called Hannibal. He's been wanting to make a movie about Hannibal for 25 years. I'm talking about Hannibal of Carthage,
Yeah.
the guy with the elephants, not Hannibal of the lambs.
Right.
Of the
Right.
lantern.
And
Who has the fava beans?
correct.
Yeah.
And so, and it looks like that project now is finally coming to fruition. A wonderful screenplay by John Logan. I believe Todd Black is producing, and Antoine Fuqua is directing. So that'll probably happen next year. So just because you write a great log line doesn't mean that the screenplay is going to be good. I mean, there's all kinds of contradictions and ironies and paradoxes. Yes.
Would you say on that, what you just said, would you say that it's easier to write a log line if the concept is really solid?
It's easier to write a log line when you have the dramatic elements that we need to see in a log line. And the problem is that a lot of writers don't understand drama. They see a movie and they're like, oh, I could do that. And then they go and do it and they really can't do it, but they don't realize they can't do it.
Yeah.
And so in a log line, there are three things that most of us are looking for, because these are the elements that we want to see in your film. And those who are members of the Inside Pitch hear me say this all the time. But even when they share their log lines, it still doesn't seem to seep through for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And those three elements in a log line are: who is the protagonist?
Yep.
What does the protagonist want? And what stands in the protagonist's way of getting what they want? Those are the three elements. That's all your log line needs to have. But the problem is that writers write these screenplays and they don't realize that they have to have a protagonist that wants something, or they don't realize that this element of wanting something needs to be physical, external, filmable, cinematic. So I'll ask a writer, what is it that your character wants? Oh, he wants peace. And I'm like, okay, but so how does he get that peace? Well, he searches for it. Oh, okay, a search. Like, how does he search for it? Well, he prays. Okay, so he prays, but what does the character do actively? Oh, well, he actively goes to church and prays. Okay. And what's the movie? Are we hearing the character's prayers? No, those prayers are secret, only to the character. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I hear, and this person thinks they have a brilliant screenplay, and they have nothing, because your character has to be active. Your character has to be actively pursuing a want, a goal.
Right.
So if somebody
what-
is struggling with creating their log line, then it's a good indicator that they might have a problem with their concept. Is what
No, I'm not saying might. I'm saying
it is.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. A log line
here's
is
a question
absolutely a diagnostic tool. It absolutely allows me to look into your screenplay. It is no different than an MRI or an X-ray, something that a doctor looks at and can get a picture of your overall health. It is the same thing. A log line, to me, it's like a blood test. It gives me a very accurate view of the health of your screenplay.
That's great. That's a great analogy. Have a question from Sarah. She says, I struggle to write log lines for TV pilots and series because the character arcs, antagonists, and obstacles can vary from week to week. Am I just looking at it wrong?
Probably. So it's like if you were to write a log line, let's say for Breaking Bad. Who is the protagonist? In this case, he's really more of an anti-hero, right? So, you know, when the show starts out, it's what's the character's name?
Walter White.
Okay. And he has, I believe he has a dilemma, correct? Which is that in the beginning of the series, he is diagnosed with some kind of terminal cancer, correct?
Right.
Okay. And what does he do about that?
He needs to make money so his family will continue to be okay.
Okay, and so he sells Tupperware, or he goes and works at Starbucks. What does he do?
He starts cooking meth.
Okay. And what stands in his way?
Morality, the law, the fact that his wife and his son, who is disabled, would not approve of
All right.
the activity.
So there you go. Now you just
Yeah.
take that information, you put it together, and you have a logline. Because we have, who is the protagonist, or again, in this case, an anti-hero. Because an anti-hero is a protagonist, but they go about doing the right thing in the wrong way. So in this case, Walter White wants to secure financing for his family. That's the right thing, but he's going about it in the wrong way because he's doing something that is illegal. So that's the classic definition of an anti-hero. But either you have a protagonist or you have an anti-hero. Regardless, you must give them something to do. And so in a series, that would be the log line for the series. And then if you were to write a log line for each specific episode, then you'd have to look at that episode and say, okay, what is Walter doing in this episode? What is it that he wants, and what stands in his way?
But Chris, going back to Sarah's question, what if it's a different kind of series? What if it's something like This Is Us or Parenthood, where you're investing in a bunch of characters? You said earlier, sometimes we go to see a half an hour, 90-minute movie just for fun. But what about those kind of shows that, may not have such a clear delineation like Breaking Bad does?
So most series have lots and lots of characters. Did Breaking Bad only have one character in it?
Right.
Okay, so a lot of characters exists in the world of a TV series. So the first thing that I would do is I would ask myself, is there a central character here? Is there a character that the series revolves around, even though there's lots of other storylines? So, for instance, you could look at The Boys on Amazon, for example. And if I were to write a log line for that, I would probably revolve that log line around the Jack Quaid character. I can't think of the character's name, but he's the son of Dennis Quaid. I would revolve the log line around him, and then I would mention how he teams with the Butcher character and then some others to defeat these superheroes who use their powers for malevolent purposes. Even though there's lots and lots of characters, so try to find who that central character is. As a dramatist, you should understand these things. You should be looking for these things. You should always, you're not a casual observer who is assuming that because there's lots of characters that you won't centralize one of them. A dramatist can kind of figure that out. So that's the first thing you should do. And I would say, of course, that if you're even putting a TV show together, that you should seriously consider those things. But then let's say that there is a show where there is no central character at all. And by the way, we could say the same thing about a film. There are films that we might call an ensemble movie. Robert Altman did a lot of them, for example, right? Like Nashville, or we had Crash won the Academy Award.
Gosford Park. Yeah.
Right. So then you have to step back and you have to look for other other elements. If the script is well written, now I read a lot of ensemble pieces by terrible writers, and those ensemble pieces suck. and it's very difficult to write a logline. But a good ensemble piece, you'll be able to find unity amongst all of the characters. So let's just look at Crash for a moment. All right. Crash told the story of several people. But there are commonalities amongst these people that unify the narrative, especially thematically. So, for example, Crash is about racism. Every one of those stories involves racism.
Mm-hmm.
The screenplay, the story is initiated around a car accident that occurs in Los Angeles, and the entire film is set in one day. So look at all these unifiers, right? A singular car crash, Los Angeles, one day, racism. These are all unifiers. And so you can build your logline around that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Love Actually is an example I always use. That's a kind of popular Christmas movie by Richard Curtis. Involves maybe, I don't know, 8 different stories. There's no central character. But what are the unifiers? Well, it's set over the Christmas season in London, and all of the stories deal with love, just different kinds of love. You've got Hugh Grant, who's in love with his assistant. You have Liam Neeson, who loves his the widower,
Mm-hmm.
Liam Neeson, who is now the father of his stepson. And so there's this love between this stepdad and his stepson. And meanwhile, the stepson is in love with a girl in his class. There's the love between 2 porn actors. There's the love between Laura Linney and her mentally ill brother, but it's all love.
Yeah.
So if you're a good writer, these are the things that you're doing. You're thinking about the unifiers as you're putting your ensemble piece together, as you're putting your series together. If you're a crappy writer, then everything is disparate and it doesn't make any sense, and you can't, and as a result, you struggle with the logline.
Sure. Those are
But-
great things to keep in mind, really.
I love that word
And-
unifier.
Yeah. Yeah. Really
Well,
good.
unity, unity is a term that we use a lot in drama because you always want your concepts and your screenplays to have unity. And unity works in many different ways. Like, for example, in drama, opposites unify, which sounds contra, what's the big word that I'm thinking?
Counterintuitive.
Thank you. Counterintuitive. And but think about it. But you have to have the right opposites
Sure.
in order for the unity to take place. So, as a very simplistic example, you think of The Odd Couple by Neil Simon. You have Felix Unger, who is a type A neat freak, and you have Oscar Madison, who is a type Z, if there's such a thing,
Slob.
human
Just a-
slob.
Yeah.
Oscar Madison is into sports and dirty water Franks, and Felix Unger is into the arts and fine cuisine. You put them together. Now, if you had Felix Unger, who is a neat freak, and you had him room with a college professor,
Right.
maybe now there's not much of of conflict, opposites, unity. So unity is I believe that it's an Aristotelian term, you know, that it goes back to poetics, the entire concept of unity. So yeah, these are like, you know, these are things that dramatists understand, and when they're going in, and even if they're not thinking about it consciously, a dramatist is working subconsciously, you know, putting all of this stuff together.
Question, did you say Dirty Water Franks?
Yes.
I would like to use that. I've never heard, I love it. Never heard it before.
You're
Question,
obviously not a New Yorker.
yeah. A question from Dan. Are you aware of screenwriters who write their log lines even before they start their screenplay? If so, how common do you think this is?
Well, I mean, look, every writer has their own process of doing things. So whatever works for you is what you can do. But I will say, personally, since we're all friends here, that you are a moron if you're not writing your logline first. First of all, you can't write a screenplay without knowing who is your protagonist, what do they want, and what stands in their way. You can't write a screenplay without that information. So since you already have that information when you're starting the screenplay, why not write the logline to see if it works? It's a litmus test. I mean, it's like, you know, because then what happens is you write a 120-page screenplay, and then you realize, oh, I didn't actually write a screenplay. And we see this every day on the Inside Pitch, every day, you know, and you get people like, I don't believe in writing log lines first. And then what they pitch is crap. And you're like, well, you know, and you know something, look, as an amateur, maybe you have all the time in the world to write crap. But I got news for you. If you're a professional, if somebody's paying you, they're going to want to see that log line first. They're going to want to know exactly what they're paying for. You know, unless you have a blind script deal or something, you know, people want to know that information up front. So I don't care what anybody else does. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah. Another question from Sean. My log line contains not what the protagonist wants, but what he must lose to realize his true self.
Well, blah, 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 blah. His true self, boring. And how do we know what it is that he's going to lose if we don't know what it is that he wants? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, you don't need to tell us what they're going to lose if the want is strong, because we understand it.
And we'll see it.
So, for example, in a log line for Taken, the Liam Neeson movie, we understand who the protagonist is. It's Liam Neeson, you know, he's some kind of former black ops agent. What is it that he wants? He wants to save his daughter from human traffickers. And what stands in his way? You know, all the bad guys. So don't we kind of understand what he has to lose? Do we have to tell anybody? Of course not to tell anybody what he's going to lose. It's right there by telling us what it is that he wants. So tell us what the characters want. Don't get into all this ridiculous stuff all the time. This is the problem, you know, is that writers get lost in they get lost in the margins. They get lost in the poetry. They get lost in all the silliness, and they just don't tell us the friggin' story. Just tell us what the movie is. Stop trying to reinvent the business. Just tell us what the movie is.
It's great. Oh, this is interesting. Christiane wonders what the log line for Love Actually might be.
Well, I actually have it. I mean, I could pull it up if anybody really.
Is this your log line for the movie that you've written, or
yeah. You know, I mean, yeah. There's no such thing as you know, like an official log line.
Right.
You know, I mean, any time a screenplay goes into any place, a production company, a studio, I wish I could share my screen and I would throw these things up, but that might be
Could
too complicated. Oh, is there a way to do it?
if you hit there's a share button at the
Oh, there
bottom,
is. Okay. All
and then
right.
you select which window you want.
Okay, let's see how this works. I'm hitting share. Share. Let's hit share. Hopefully, you're not going to see things that you shouldn't see. It says send link. Maybe I have to send it to you.
Robin may have to approve.
You want me to just read it? I can just read it.
Yeah, just read it.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that you were
Okay.
talking about who's.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. All right,
Yeah.
so here's a logline that I wrote for Love Actually. A varied group of Brits struggles with the pleasures, pain, and power of love during the Christmas season.
There we go.
Now, you might say, well, that's not very exciting. Well, Richard Curtis doesn't have to worry about those things, but you do. So if you make the choice to write a script like this, then that's going to be your log line, and then that's going to be your cross to bear. So this is why I would always suggest that new writers should avoid stuff like this. New writers should avoid ensemble pieces. They should avoid stuff that isn't easily pitched, because you're in no position to be able to get the kind of footing that you need. Richard Curtis just has to walk into, in fact, he just produces his own stuff probably, but he can walk into any studio and say, I have an idea for a rom-com. This is the guy that did Notting Hill and like a gazillion other things. And they're going to say, sure, but it's going to be a much tougher road for you. You're always so much better off just coming up with an idea that is more traditional, that has a single protagonist, with a clear-cut goal. It's just the smarter way to go. Ensemble pieces very rarely sell on spec anyway. So, then you'd have to find a producer that's going to have to package it, and good luck with all that. Good luck with all that. You just set yourself back like 7 or 8 years. So maybe you should be thinking, I don't want to say commercially, because I do want people to write what it is that they want to write and write the things that they have to write. But then, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that.
Yeah. Sean has an interesting idea. I think this is his idea for a logline about Alien. And the logline is Jaws in space.
All right, so that technically is not a logline. And why is it not a logline? Because I just said a logline has to have 3 elements. It has to tell us who the protagonist is, what the protagonist wants, and what stands in the protagonist's way. I said that many times. Am I a little grumpy today? I might be a little grumpy today. I apologize.
Well, actually, Delisha commented, can't wait to get some of this tough love at the retreat.
Baby, it's going to be tough. Me and you, tough. But yes, because I want people to think like dramatists. I want people to think dramatically and cinematically. All right, so what was that question again? So Jaws in space, right? So Jaws in space, look, that's great. I love that, but it's not a log line. So if somebody's asking you for a log line, then you have to say, okay, who is the protagonist in Alien? It's Ripley. What is it that she wants? She wants to get the hell off that ship. And what stands in her way? Well, the alien. So you can write a log line for that, and then you can also, not in the log line, but as an addendum, say it's Jaws in space. That can be part of your pitch, but that's not a log line.
So maybe a
Also,
starter, maybe like an elevator pitch. Hey, it's Jaws in space, and then you fill in with the log line.
however, right. But remember, I don't know. So Jaws in space, like it's great, but so then I'm thinking, oh, you mean there's a shark in space? You see, because Sean is taking liberties with the fact that we all know what Alien is about. But stop and think about it, that if this were 1978 or 1977, and you were pitching it and you went into somebody's office and said, it's Jaws in space, they might think, what? So there's a shark on
Yeah,
like,
confusing.
yeah. So,
And this is before Sharknado ever happened,
right,
so
exactly.
more
So
confusion.
yeah. So again, hindsight is 2020, Sean, but you are not pitching a film that's already been made. You are pitching a film that hasn't been made, one that nobody knows about. So a log line must have who is the protagonist, what does the protagonist want, and what stands in the protagonist's way.
Right. Does anybody have a log line they'd like to put up on the chat, and anybody brave enough out there?
Where are they? Just when you thought it was safe. By the way,
Yes.
just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water is not a log line. That is a tagline that is that was invented for advertising, that was invented for movie posters, but it doesn't tell me anything. So imagine you are coming to pitch, and let's just pretend that you don't say it's for Jaws 2, but you say, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, I'm thinking, oh, you ate 30 minutes ago and now it's safe to go in the pool? I don't know what that means. So you have to also have a log line, so sure, you want to have something kitschy, something fun. I think that's great. Jaws in space is terrific, but it's not a log line.
Tony says during a webinar, no one can hear you scream.
I like that.
I like that.
But we do have a couple of log lines that have just come in.
Okay.
Are you ready, Mr. Shark? Here's one from Sarah. Newly unemployed from an insurance fraud investigation firm, a single mom starts a private detective agency with the help of her kung fu, sifu, and her hacker teenager's father, an infamous jewel thief wanted by the FBI.
Okay, so I think like you, I don't know what a sifu is. Are we being a little dumb here? With the help of her kung fu sifu. You have to be careful in a log line. Try not to get, yeah, okay. So it's a master, but John didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was either. So it's not helping you. So you would just be better off saying her kung fu master or her kung fu teacher. Don't try to be, this isn't the place. Listen, I think like when you're writing, details are so important. You want that detailed kind of writing. But in a log line is not the time and place to sort of, show off your prowess, your vocabulary, your penchant for poetry. A log line is a utilitarian tool. It's basic. It's just giving us the information that we need. So newly employed from an insurance fraud investigation firm, that's a mouthful. I would try to find another way, maybe just say, newly unemployed as a fraud investigator. We don't need to hear insurance fraud investigation firm, right? Newly unemployed as a fraud investigator, done. Why is it that we don't really have to know that it's from an insurance firm? Well, because it doesn't really have all of that much to do, like the cause and effect in the log line isn't really that strong. So And then we've got starts a private detective agency with the help of her kung fu teacher and her hacker daughter's father. So this is not a log line. And why is it not a log line? Because it doesn't tell us what the character is doing. So she's starting a detective agency, great. And she's starting a detective agency with certain people, great. Okay, so what is she doing? Now, is this maybe I should ask this question, is this a TV series? Or is this a feature? By the way, really, really important to always let somebody know what it is you're pitching. So this is a TV series. Always really, really important to let us know. All right, so then I'm going to take back what I said. And so as a series log line, I still think that this is a mouthful. Less is more. But as a series, then I understand that the series will revolve around, I'm assuming, a different investigation each week. If I'm wrong about that, and that the series is about them trying to solve one particular mystery, then that should be in the log line.
Great. Here's another one. This is from Elizabeth. A woman suffering from survivor's guilt due to the suicides of her father, mother, and brother enters the netherworld looking for answers from her family who don't believe they are dead.
Okay, it's interesting. Let me just try to find that written out. Okay. A woman suffering from survivor's guilt due to the suicides of her father, mother, and brother. So that's again, that's like, this is an example of, and by the way, I believe that everybody can open up this chat. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so everybody, you can just follow along with us. This is an example of too much information. This is an example of the writer who it feels like that the specifics of the scenario must be shared rather than perhaps just stepping back a little bit and finding a more elegant, truncated way to present this. So, for example, I might say something like, so here it says, a woman suffering from survivor's guilt. I just might say, a guilt-ridden woman. Now, if you feel like survivor's guilt, that the word survivor must be in there. But when you bring up the idea of the suicides, I sort of feel like you have to have a little bit of faith in the people that are reading your log lines. I mean, I've read over 60,000 screenplays, so I can tell you that, like, I'm able to extrapolate stuff from the log line. I can kind of put two and two together and figure things out. So if I hear guilt and I hear suicide, then I'm going to assume that it's probably some kind of survivor's guilt. Now, in regards to the suicides of her father, mother, and brother, I'm not saying I would, but I would certainly, when I'm playing with the log line, because as I told you before, I would perhaps write a longer log line and then find ways to reduce it to its least common denominator. And I might say after the suicide of her family, perhaps, or try to finesse it that way somehow. So I might try that for a little bit and see how that works. All right, and then she enters the netherworld looking for answers from her family who don't believe they're dead. I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's maybe a little bit murky to me. Just, I'm not exactly sure. First of all, the idea of looking for answers, I don't know. That doesn't sound like it's the most exciting way to phrase that. I might try to find a way to at least dress that up so it sounds more exciting. And so her family is dead, but they don't know that they're dead. And so she goes into the other world looking for answers from her family who don't believe they're dead. Yeah, so I'm just not exactly sure sort of what the particulars are. I'm sure if you kind of explained it a little bit more, I would probably be able to put this into something maybe a little bit more understandable. But yes, overall, we have a protagonist. We know what the protagonist wants, and we know what stands in the protagonist's way. Now, just because you have all those elements doesn't necessarily mean that the log line is clear or that the log line is working or that it's even interesting. So, but at the very least, you have to start with those three elements, and then you have to be a harsher critic, because people like me are out there, and we're going to be harsh, and so you have to be your harshest critic. You have to really look at these things and then ask yourself questions. Is this clear? Like, it's clear to me because I wrote it. I understand it. Of course, it's clear to me. But is it clear to anybody else?
Interesting. David has asked for his logline to be reviewed when a successful financial advisor and his family moved to an upscale neighborhood. Their peace and security are shattered by the wildly unstable postwoman who will stop at nothing, including sexual assault, to tear them apart.
Okay, so this logline sort of does the thing that is always quite dangerous, which is that it loses its focus. So who is the protagonist here? The protagonist is the financial advisor. What is it that the financial advisor wants? Well, somebody could say peace and security, but I don't know what that means. That's internal. That's not the kind of goal that I am looking for in a movie. And then it makes the mistake of turning the log line over to the antagonist. Because now it really becomes about the unstable postal woman. And it gives her the goal. It gives her the goal.
Interesting.
And this kind of thing always worries me because I'm like, uh-oh, this is probably a screenplay where the writer loves the villain more than the protagonist, hence the title, and maybe as a result, that protagonist role is tenuous or weak. So I would think much more, and clearly there's a very, very easy way to fix this. Whether or not it reflects the screenplay in of itself, that I don't know. But clearly, the goal of the protagonist is to stop this postwoman, and that's vague, but that would be the beginning of it. And so they go to her boss, but it's a union and it's a federal job, so it starts there, and then it gets bigger and bigger. Think of a movie like Cape Fear, where Nick Nolte starts by talking to Robert De Niro. Yes, I'm doing the Scorsese remake, and then the plans get bigger and bigger and bigger and crazier and more dangerous as Nick Nolte tries to thwart this this crazed interloper. So you have to make this more active from the protagonist's perspective. This is a big mistake that I see in a lot of loglines.
Hey, Chris, we have 5 minutes to 11. We know we've set this as an hour, and we're happy, everybody, to go over a little bit if Zoom will allow us. But we just want to interject and remind you that the amazing Mr. Lockhart right here will be at the retreat that Robin and I will be hosting in October. I just put the link in the chat box. If you're interested in learning more, please let us know if you have any questions later. You can, if you're serious about it, fill out an application. There's no financial commitment. It's more or less just to talk with Robin and I later about it. But everything we're doing here is what we're going to be doing at the retreat and more. So our retreat is called the Concept and Development Retreat. Am I right, Chris? This is one of the reasons why you wanted to do it with us. You thought this was a unique idea for a screenwriting retreat to come with a few concepts like we're discussing today, and then getting some advice from people like you and our other two mentors, professionals, who will help guide you to choose the most viable and original project to spend all of your time on. Because as you mentioned, Chris, I mean, many people spend years on a script, but it just might not be working. It might not be viable. So that's one of the reasons we're doing the retreat this way, is to make sure you have a firm footing and foundation to then go forth and continue working on your script. And we do have a couple of partial scholarships available. So if you're interested, just let us know. And we'll get back to you. But hopefully this will go over 11 for us. And
Oh yeah, I think the Zoom is set up fine.
good. We'll bring it back
But if we
to
do
the
drop it
conversation.
out, nice to meet everybody.
Yeah. Thanks
I
for
think
coming,
I
everybody.
think we're fine. If we can get back to one specific question, we'll get back to log lines in a sec. But Christiane says, I make these mistakes too regarding making the goal internal. Could you share examples of external goals or ones so we can get this into our heads?
Yeah, so an external goal is something that is physical, something that we can see. So let's use a very obvious example. We can say Die Hard. Action movies never have an issue with externalizing. And so in Die Hard, it's a movie about a New York City cop who comes to Los Angeles to try and reconcile with his wife, of whom he is separated, with whom he is separated. And okay, it's great. So what do we do? Do we just have him like knock on her front door and, like beg her to come back? What do we do? Well, I have an idea. What's the best way to reconcile with her? Well, how about he risks his life to save her? Because that would prove through action, through behavior, who he is and how he feels about her. And so let's have her taken hostage at a Christmas party in a high-rise building. And he has to storm this building against several heavily armed terrorists in an effort to rescue his wife. The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is about an orphan, a young girl who lives on a farm in Kansas with her old aunt and uncle, and she just doesn't really know where she belongs. This is somebody whose internal search is about trying to find her place in the world. And she believes that it has to be out of Kansas. God, what would it be like over the rainbow? What would it be like? Okay, so that's your character. Then a dramatist says, even though this is based on a book, I'm cheating. A dramatist asks the question, and by the way, even a novelist might. All right, so this is a character who isn't happy where she is. So what can we do? Like, how can I create drama out of this? All right, how about we give her exactly what it is that she wants? How about we take her over the rainbow? And now she's in the most colorful, beautiful, glorious place, exactly where anybody would want to be. Okay, that's interesting, but like that's not a movie. Like if it's a great, beautiful, wonderful place, what's the movie? Well, how about she kills a witch and as a result makes an enemy of that witch's sister. And now she wants to get the hell out of there. But in order to do that, she needs to find a wizard. So her goal is she wants to get back to Kansas, and we keep her active by having her set out to find the wizard. And then when she does find the wizard, he gives her yet another task to bring to him the broomstick of the Wicked Witch. She's always active. She's always active. These are ways to externalize. Even in Hamlet, you know, Hamlet, a ponderous play of 5 acts. But at its core, Hamlet is a story of revenge. Hamlet sets out to avenge the murder of his father. That's his goal, to avenge the murder of his father. And he sets out to do that. And even though that's a play and, you know, there is a lot of internal stuff to it, Shakespeare still understood that his characters needed something to do. Also, you'll note that Shakespeare, which is an incredibly complicated play, can still be boiled down to this very simple core
Yeah.
of this, you know, prince setting out to catch the killer of the king.
Mm.
So because that's what a good dramatist understands. A good dramatist understands to keep the center, the core, the concept very simple, and then complicate the plot. Keep the story simple, but the plot. The story is basically your concept, at least in my opinion, and then the plot is the way you tease that out, the way you take us all the way to the end.
Mm.
So and that's a big mistake that writers make, is that they create a very complicated core, and then their plot has to be even so much more complicated that it's just a convoluted mess. And so keep it simple, stupid. KISS, right? KISS. And
Yep.
So just give your character something to do. In theory, drama is always about what's going on inside of the character. That's what drama is about. But the dramatist has to externalize that, because we can't see inside the character's head, because film is a visual medium. If you really want to deal with stuff on the inside, then write a novel. But
Right.
look, there's a movie like Ordinary People, you know, 1981, won the Academy Award for Best Picture. I love that film.
Mm.
And that's, you know, that is a psychological drama. It's about a young man whose brother died in a boating accident, and he sort of feels like his mother would have rather have had him die in that boating accident. Not to mention
Mm.
that he also has survivor's guilt, because I believe he was in the boat with his brother. So and the movie begins with the young man out of a psychiatric hospital after having tried to kill himself. And this is a story about this young man who is desperately seeking this kind of spiritual peace. So that is internal. But the script kind of cleverly externalizes the drama, because the boogeyman in the script, the antagonist, if that's what you want to say, is the one person who should be his strongest ally, his own mother. And so through the whole story, he's struggling. It is that relationship, and we can see that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so that's how the drama is created cinematically and externally.
Yeah, I remember in film school that was used as an example, Chris, because we had the mother get very upset at the breakfast table, and she takes the son's breakfast that he doesn't want, and she shoves the French toast down the garbage disposal and flips the switch. It's really loud, and you can just see the anger there, and what he feels at that moment is a really good filmmaking moment.
Yeah, one of my most favorite scenes in any movie is in Ordinary People. It's so horribly painful when it's Christmas time and the kid's grandfather wants to take a picture of the boy and his mother, and the grandfather or the father, who's never taking the picture, can't quite get the camera right. And the mother has to stand next to her son waiting for the picture to be taken. And she's squirming, just having to be in the same space as him. And the kid senses it, and it is so fucking painful. But
Yeah.
what just a great way to externalize, dramatizing
Yeah,
all that stuff inside. That's what a dramatist does.
that's just like such great advice. Really fantastic.
Well, yeah.
Stacy asks about her logline. With her classmates held hostage in a once glorious movie palace, a troubled science nerd must weaponize her intellect to dispose of mass terrorists one deadly step at a time. But the bloodbath gets personal when she uncovers the mastermind of the vicious plot.
All right, so it's probably TMI with the bloodbath gets personal. This is when the writer all of a sudden sort of doesn't feel confident in kind of their core concept. So they feel like, oh, I better add in more stuff so it, sounds more intriguing. So we know who the protagonist is. It's the troubled science nerd, and she must weaponize her intellect. I might find another word than intellect. Maybe we know that she's a science nerd, so we understand what that means. But, again, intellect does sound a little bit internal. There just might be a slightly more exciting, interesting visual way. The weaponized certainly works. But that might be maybe a tweak. And then the question that I have for Stacy, it's a very, very, very simple question. But the bloodbath gets personal when she uncovers the mastermind of the vicious plot. Now, I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it rhetorically. Is this information that's resolved, that is revealed in the first act? So within the first 30 pages, are we aware, or is she aware? Does she uncover the mastermind of the vicious plot? I mean, I would have to say no. That would be my guess, because it would be ridiculous to reveal that within the first 30 pages of the screenplay. So why do I ask this question? I ask this question because a logline basically only involves the first act of your screenplay. Because who is the protagonist? What does the protagonist want? And what stands in the protagonist's way is all first act information. That's information that we have to know for you to set up your story, for us to then enter the second act as the character sets out to reach their goal, to solve their problem. So again, a logline typically involves just information in the first act. So if the uncovering of the mastermind of the vicious plot occurs in the first act, which I don't think it does, then you can include in the logline. But my guess is that is second act or even third act information. It does not belong in a logline.
Interesting.
Chris, I have a logline here. I had to ask for clarification already, so that might be part of this discussion, how to incorporate certain unique information in a logline. I'm just going to read it as it was written, and then I'll try to answer if you have a question about it. This is Don Jones. When a youthful prank has dire repercussions on the royal house, a repentant heir/crow embarks on a galactic coffee run to placate his mom/queen before she banishes him forever.
Okay.
So then my
So
question to her was, what do you mean by air/crow? And then she had to explain who the main characters are to me. Shall I tell you that part, or do
well,
you
no,
respond first?
because here's why. Because with all due respect to Dawn, the logline fails. Because the objective of the logline is to communicate
Clear. Yeah.
the idea clearly and concisely with this, which this cannot do. The minute that the writer has to start to qualify or has to explain things, they fail. Because when I'm reading a log line, let's say in a query letter, you're not there to explain things to me. And you shouldn't have to be. So this could come down to to perhaps what I said earlier, where this is a writer who has a core idea, where the core idea is too complicated. And she's not following in the footsteps of Shakespeare, which is, again, to create a simple core and then complicate the plot. But don't complicate the core, keep the core simple. And, so this is clearly some kind of, like quirky sort of thing, it,
Comedy sci-fi, she says.
yeah. It reminds me of, I'm having,
The Douglas Adams.
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Here's one. A male mermaid falls in love with an emotionally damaged marine biologist in the Hawaiian waters and learns that her employer's major benefactor is polluting his beloved ocean.
I'm scrolling to see if I can find it.
That's down toward the end.
All right. Can't you just say merman? I'm just asking,
Chris
Can you-
Rogers at the bottom.
Chris, can't you just say merman instead of a male mermaid? Or are you afraid that maybe we won't know what a merman is? I don't know. But again, always try to find ways to consolidate your words. If you're screenwriters, then you are supposed to be an economist, because the screenwriter, their trade is the economy of words. All right, but so falls in love with an emotionally damaged marine biologist in the Hawaiian waters and learns, avoid the word learns. Learns is internal. I can't film somebody learning. I don't know what that means. It's not active. Learning isn't active in a cinematic sense. Learns that her employer's major benefactor is polluting his beloved ocean. So I don't know, like, to me, it would be more interesting if the marine biologist, all right, so it's an emotionally damaged marine biologist. Yeah, so for me, it just sort of feels like I'm not sure what your A story is here. So you're leading with the whole idea of falling in love with the marine biologist, but I don't know. So is this a love story where the benefactor is complicating their relationship, or is this about the merman who's out to stop the benefactor, but the romance serves as an obstacle to that? It is a very important question that I ask, because it helps me understand the film better. So I'm confused here in that regard. Because having her fall in love with the marine biologist, there's no conflict in that. At least I don't understand what the conflict is. I guess maybe I could think, well, he's a merman, and he, the marine biologist, she, the marine biologist, is not. But I don't know, the log line isn't hinting toward that kind of conflict. So I don't know if I'm going to necessarily interpolate that into the log line. So So it's kind of a weird thing because when you start with that, it makes me think that's what the movie is about. And
Yeah.
then I don't know what the conflict is there. And then at some point in the movie, you introduce, you know, her, that the love interest's boss, major benefactor, my God, talk about like 10 degrees of separation. You know, you could certainly make this a lot easier. You know, how come it's just not the marine biologist's boss, or it's, you know, just whatever. I guess because it's like, well, you know, would the boss be polluting the waters and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It sounds a little bit more convoluted maybe than it should be, but I don't know if this is about the merman trying to stop the pollution with the romance as a subplot, or if it's about the romance with the pollution as a subplot.
I have a quick question. Can you give everybody an example of, or several examples of really good log lines? I know there are lots
mean-
of them out there.
I mean, I'll just read some that I have here.
Okay.
You know, whether you think they're good or not. How about,
If you think they're good, I think they're good.
well, I actually wrote these when I read the screenplay.
Ah,
So, conclave. When the papal conclave descends upon the Vatican to elect the next pope, the dean of the College of Cardinals struggles to root out the deceit and dirty politics in the process. So we know who the protagonist is, the dean of the College of Cardinals. We know what his goal is, to elect a pope. And we know what stands in his way, which is the dirty politics.
and there's nothing about the ending.
Well, because as I said,
well, yeah, exactly. That's a great example of, you know, not trying to fold everything into.
right, again, a log line is first act information.
Yep.
Who is the protagonist? What does the protagonist want? What stands in the protagonist's way?
Mhm.
So here's one for Training Day, which won my client, Denzel Washington, an Academy Award. This is the log line that I wrote after I read the script, the first draft, way back when. Training in the narcotics unit with a corrupt LAPD detective, an idealistic cop struggles to survive his first day when he finds himself caught in the middle of his partner's dirty deal with the Russian mob. Now, you'll note that the log line revolves around the idealistic cop, because in the movie, Ethan Hawke is the protagonist. It's his story. It's not Denzel's story. It's Ethan Hawke's story. So again, as a dramatist, you have to be able to look at a movie and ask, okay, whose story is it? Just because Denzel won the best actor and Ethan Hawke was nominated for best supporting actor doesn't mean that Denzel is the protagonist or even the anti-hero. This story revolves around Ethan Hawke. Yes, it's a great role for Denzel. He has his own goal in the script. He has his own arc, all of that. It doesn't diminish or deplete the role of Alonzo that Denzel plays, but dramaturgically, the story revolves around Ethan Hawke. So that's something that, you know, you need to consider when you're writing a log line. That sometimes you might have a two-hander, you know, which means that it's about two people. Like, for example, a romantic comedy, you know, where you have the two love interests. But often, most of the time, again, if it's a well-written script, the screenplay leans toward one of the two characters as its central character.
Yeah.
And when you're putting together your concept and your idea, and you're starting to put your movie together in your head, these are the things that you have to be considering. All right, so here's one last one I'll do. This is for my client, John David Washington, who's the son of Denzel Washington. Black Klansman.
Hmm.
A movie directed by Spike Lee, co-written by Spike Lee. And I should say Kevin Wilmot, who I graduated with from NYU's dramatic writing program. They won the Academy Award for this screenplay. Colorado Springs' first Black policeman infiltrates the local chapter of the KKK, posing as a white man with the intent of taking down the organization.
That's great. Yeah.
Now it cheats a little bit because it might, and this of course was always an issue that I had with the script, was because the police officer couldn't actually truly infiltrate the KKK. He couldn't go to the meetings because he's Black. But, you know, so he has to infiltrate it in other ways. But you hope that somebody hears a log line. They're like, well, wait a minute. How does a Black man infiltrate the KKK? Posing as a white man. Well, how does he do that? And you know, then you hope that that might stir up a little bit of intrigue in the screenplay. So those are some examples.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Are you okay with doing maybe one more log line?
Whatever you want to do.
We're gonna end here at 11:30. But we thought we'd throw out one more log line for you, and this is a TV idea.
And apologies, we haven't gotten to everybody's log line.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
But okay. So
I'll talk to you all in Scotland, one-on-one, when we're in
There we
Scotland,
go.
one-on-one. A little
That's
whiskey, and
yes.
no, don't
Now
worry.
we've got
And
two-
even more truth will come out.
Now we've
Yeah.
got two distilleries kind of vying for the place to be or the organization to do the whiskey tasting.
Well, I don't drink, and it's a good thing because, yeah, no, you would not want me giving feedback with whiskey on my brain.
Well, the last logline for today is a TV pilot logline, and it says, an embattled Australian mayor is forced to create a public emergency as a distraction after his chief of staff's corrupt activities are exposed, instigating a corruption investigation by authorities, threatening his hopes for the upcoming election.
All right, it's funny because I just read a feature screenplay that has a similar concept. Don't worry, it's not about Australia, it's set in another country, and but let me just read it one more time. An embattled Australian mayor is forced to create a public emergency as a distraction after his chief of staff's corrupt activities are exposed, instigating a corruption investigation by authorities, threatening his hopes for the upcoming election. So I think the first half is good, and then the second half maybe goes on a little long. An embattled Australian mayor is forced to create a public emergency as a distraction after his chief of staff's corrupt activities are exposed. I almost think that's good enough, to be honest, because then we understand, at least I understand, that that is going to create all sorts of problems. And so I don't know if I need instigating a corruption investigation by authorities, threatening his hopes for the upcoming election. You know, you might even want to maybe instead of saying an embattled Australian mayor, because we'll get a sense that he's embattled by what is going to transpire in the logline. Maybe you might tell us up front that he's up for election. If there's just is there some kind of simple word for that? When somebody's running for office, is there a simple word for that? A simple adjective? Anybody know? To just I don't know. Maybe not.
Say it again.
Maybe
Say again.
just instead of saying threatening his hopes for the upcoming election, can we just come up with a adjective instead of embattled
Oh,
that tells us that he's up for re-election?
yeah.
And so that's what I would suggest. Put it there.
Losing.
Just whatever it is, put it there so we know, okay, this is an Australian mayor who's up for re-election. And then you don't have to say at the bottom, threatening his hopes for the upcoming election, because it just goes without saying. If he is up for re-election, and maybe you just say that, an Australian mayor up for re-election is forced to create a public emergency as a distraction after his chief of staff's corrupt activities are exposed. And again, I think we understand what that means. We've seen enough of these movies. This is what we call a creative lie scenario. Popular in comedies, for example, Tootsie being one.
Wag the dog.
Wag the dog, where you're lying about something very big. Mrs. Doubtfire is, again, very much like Tootsie, is a creative lie. Sister Act is a creative lie where she's pretending to be a nun. Here, it's a creative lie, and we understand that a creative lie will always blow up eventually. So that would be my my advice. And then if somebody says, okay, that's interesting. Now, some people might say, gee, I'd like to know what the public emergency is. And so I appreciate the fact that it's a public emergency, because maybe to describe it would take up a lot of space, but maybe not. Because remember, in drama, you want to always come up with the simple stuff rather than things that are too convoluted. But if there's an easy way to drop that in there, you could certainly write a draft with it in there to see if it works or not. Some people might say, gee, I'd like to know. Personally, I don't need to know. I'm fine with the public emergency. Like, I get it. And for me, that sort of would have me say, gee, I wonder what that is. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But somebody might maybe lean the other way. But you can't please all the people all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I personally want to thank you and say I could listen to you all day.
Oh,
we do need to
too kind.
let you get to your real life, and just thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thanks for everybody who came on, and maybe I'll see you in Scotland. You take the high road and I'll take the low road.
I'm sure if they weren't muted, we'd hear some applause
Some
here.
applause. We'll
Maybe
hear
a little
everything.
bit of
Maybe we'll see
bagpipes.
some of the visual. But yeah, Chris, this has been awesome, and I agree with Robin. I could do another hour or more, but this has been great. Thank you so much.
You know something, you guys will be puncturing your eardrums in Scotland. Oh my God, I don't want to hear this guy talk ever again.
Oh boy, yeah.
But thank you both. It was a lot
Just
of fun.
don't pick up the bagpipes. That's all we ask.
All right, I won't.
All right.
Although I'm full of hot air, as you can all see. Have a great weekend.
For coming. Have a
Thank you,
great
everybody.
weekend.
Okay, take
See you
care.
later.
Thank
All
you.
Bye.